So there we go. We started the recording, and so good morning, everybody. Let's finish up lesson 6 and get a good start on lesson 7, which lesson 7 covers adding media queries to this, so that I mean already this work would work on a small screen, but we're going to customize it so that it actually looks really good on a small screen. I mean, you can see that it resizes, but if you make it a little bit too small, you'll notice, for example, that the green awareness in action drops to 2 lines, so we're going to fix that. You'll also notice that the fern is a little bit too big, so that when it drops down to a smaller screen size, that will be fixed. The one thing that they changed right away is that you'll notice that the block quote, because if you recall, one of the things that I mentioned a while back is that when pages load in your website, they start from the top left and move across to the right and then move their way to the bottom. Well, that block quote right after the header would be the first thing that loads, but maybe that's not the first thing that you want visible after the header. So that's one of the main things that we work on changing inside lesson 7, so that actually it's the article that appears directly after the header when it shrinks down to this size. But then as it expands into a larger screen size, then it goes back to this order. So those are some of the things that we're going to work on. But first, getting the correct typeface and fonts can be kind of a bit of a pain in web design. It's not really automatic, or as easy as if you were working in Illustrator, Photoshop. So if you recall from the first lecture that we did on HTML, that one of the most important HTML tags is the body tag, because that's where the core, the meat of everything is. So if you want to set kind of a standard for your typeface and the fonts that you use, then that would be where you would want to establish it. And there's already a default font that's established here, but we're going to override that with our green styles. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click and add a new one here. And I'm just going to write body, and that's all I need to do. And hit the return key a couple of times. And now what we can do, you can see that the whole body is selected in here. That's not only the main article, but the left and the right side. So with that selected, I can come in here to type. And what we're going to do first is under the font family, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create, and we're going to manage fonts, and we're going to create our own font family. And then for the header, the H1, we're going to set up something specific for it as well. And then that should pretty much do it for lesson 6. So if I come down here and I manage fonts, this is kind of nice, something that Adobe does. So it gives you all of these different type categories that you can select. And you can use any one of them for your websites, but it gives you some guidance here. Notice in the upper left-hand corner here, this one, that if you wanted to see what type families and the fonts within those would be usable for headlines, just about all of them would be workable. If you wanted to see what groups would work well for body copy or text, then it gives you another group. Because some of the more decorative fonts look beautiful for headlines, but for large blocks of text, it's very difficult to read. So what we're going to do here is let's select both of these. And you'll notice that there's only one font that according to them, works well for both. And I would agree. On my personal website, I use Sans Source Pro, or Source Sans Pro, I should say. It's really a good one. So if I select that, okay, and I can go ahead and I can select done. If I come back over here and let me look again, let's go into here. You can see that I've added this to my group, okay? But it's not a part of a font family. And if you recall, the reason that you need or font families or groups, whatever you want to call it, is that not everybody's computer has all of the typefaces that maybe you appreciate or that you like. So you need to specify. And if Source Sans Pro is your first choice, then that will be the one that it will look for first. If it can't find it, then maybe Helvetica would be your second choice, and then maybe Arial would be your third. And then you can go down the line, and then as a last resort, if they don't have any of the fonts that you prefer, then it's just going to arbitrarily pick the default sans serif typeface or whatever. So that in web design is something that you do, is you select these groups. So again, I'm going to go back to manage groups. And then over here, I'm going to go to, for custom font stacks is what I want to do. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start by selecting Source Sans Pro, and I'm going to move that over to create my custom font stack. That's going to be within this. And then the other ones that they want us to select, I've got to look at the book myself to see which ones they want us to go for. The first one is Source Sans Pro. And then we're going to pick Trebuchet. So I'll just type it in, the next one in here, and I'll just say Trebuchet rather than look for it. So Trebuchet, whoops, no, Trebuchet, MS. So that one is selected. We'll go ahead, and that would be our second choice. Verdana, I like Verdana a lot. It was designed specifically for the web. So that's a good, for sans serif typefaces. And that's the other thing for large blocks of text. In print, serif works really well. So if you look at most magazines or newspapers or that sort of thing, serif typefaces like Times Roman and stuff work really well for big blocks of text. But for some reason on the web, the serifs kind of fall apart or make it more difficult to read. So generally speaking, for big blocks of text, this is something that you might consider for your websites, that that you pick a sans serif for web design. The next one would be Arial. So we'll go ahead and we'll select Arial. And that will be the next one that we add. And then the last one is going to be just the, well, we'll use Helvetica. And then the last one will be just a plain old sans serif. That's it. So that's the default. And that's something that you have to remember, that you don't have the same control in web design as you do in print. You have to create options, because ultimately it's the end user's computer and their whatever browser that they are using that will determine what is going to work. So again, here's the new font family that we just created. So that's the group that's going to be selected. And you can see that it's changed quite a bit, okay? So the other thing that we need to do for that is we need to change a few other things in here. Is that we're going to select the size, we're going to select the weight. The font weight is selected by default here at 200. We're going to bump that up to 400. So it's a little bit nicer, okay, a little bit more readable. And then we're under font size. We are going to pick a point size as the default. Now that's not necessarily the size that are in pixels. So instead of 0 here, I'm going to select 14 point. And between 14 and 16 for pixels for default text size is a good place to start. Most browsers use 16 pixels as the default, and many designers like their text to be a little bit understated, so that would work for us. So we've pretty much set up our body here. So the next thing that we're going to do now is we're going to set up one, instead of using the same Arial, or not Arial, the same Source Sans Pro for our H1 tag here, okay, we're going to do something a little bit unique. But later on, when you publish it, you're going to notice that sometimes it's not visible, the font that we choose, for the reasons that I've just outlined. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create another new selector. And this one is going to be main.row article H1. So we may already have that up here. Main.row. No, we don't. We have header, we have main row block P, main aside. No, we don't. So I'm going to create a new one for here. So this is going to be main.row. And then I'm going to put a space, article, so that it just focuses on any H1 tag inside the article. Okay. Make sure I'm spelling all of this right. And then H1. And I'm going to hit the return key a couple of times. Okay, so it's just, if I click on there, notice that it just highlights that one and that's it. So we're going to actually come in here for font and under text, and we're going to pick a different one, and it's under managing. If I put in here a search, I think it's Padua is the one that they want us to use. Padua 1, this is it right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add that. Okie doke. So now I can come back here, go to font family, and I'll go ahead and I'll select Padua 1. And you can see how that changes. And it's kind of a block serif. And it's nice, it's a good choice. I like that. But then there's a couple of other things that they want us to change here regarding the margins and the size, for example, that it needs for a headline, it needs to be a little bit bigger, and maybe the line height so that the spacing between the lines is a little bit different. So let's start with the margins. So I'm going to come back over here and make sure that everything is selected. Let's come back with margins. And margins, we're just going to use 0. So we can use the shorthand for that, 0 pixels. Okay. I kind of like that's a little bit more. So I'm sorry. That was margin at the top. So I'm going to get rid of that. I want margin at the top and margin at the bottom. I want that to be 15 pixels. I like it to have a little bit more myself at the top. Okay, that pushes it away. I don't want that all the way around. So let's do this again. Let's clear all of this. And I'm going to put 0 at the top, right here. And then at the bottom, I want 15 pixels. There we go. So that pushes it down just a little bit. I would prefer to have, so the headline, the header, doesn't touch or come close to touching the top. My preference would be, to at least add maybe 5, maybe 10 pixels. So that pushes that down a little bit. That's just my preference. I like having a little bit more air around the type. Yeah, something like that. That's my preference. And then under the size, okay, so if we come over here to type size, then what we need to do, we already changed the weight, font family, we got that. Type size, we're going to go to percentage, And I'm going to put in here 300%. And percentage is a good way to do that. There we go. That's a good size overall. I would agree with them on that. And then line height, we're going to go to 150%. So again, that's going to be in a percentage as well. So let's go 150. 150. There we go. Okay, so that pushes everything away a little bit. So we pretty much, let's make sure that everything is saved. So I'm going to go to File, Save All, and make sure that everything is updated. Okay, close, and we're good to go. So that pretty much. We got anything else that I forgot about? Oh, no, we do have, there were a couple of other things in here that we wanted to change. I guess for the hold on here. So, oh, I see. We're going to change it for the aside. So for the main row aside, that's what we wanted to do. Again, so that's targeting both of these under font size, okay, under percentage. We're going to select 95%. So there's always a couple of things that I forget in here. So it's a little bit smaller, a little bit more, you know, understated compared to what we see in the main. So that's sort of important. The same for the main row aside block quote. We're going to change that a little bit. So here's the block quote. So we'll change that a little bit. Font size, we're going to make sure that it is 100%. Make sure that it's targeting everything correctly. And when it disappears like that, that's sort of what you want it to see, because you know that this rule that you created is affecting it. Okay, so that's 100%. And then the border around it, you want to make sure is selected to none. But I like, for the block quote, I like the left one here. I kind of like that. That's my choice. And then that's it. We're done. Again, I knew I would forget something. We'll make sure that we saved all. And that's it. So we're ready to work on mobile devices now, so that, you know, this does work for a mobile device, but we want to fine tune it. Okay. So we're done with this one. And so this is something that you need to remember to do for the lessons. That I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to go to Site, Manage Sites. Okay, and I'm going to go into the site that I created for this class. I don't know which one you named. And instead of lessons, the root folder being lesson 6, this will now be lesson 7. So every time we do another lesson, you're going to change the root folder, and you're also going to target the image folder that's contained inside that. So we've got that. And then under advanced settings, under local info, instead of the lesson folder 6, now you can see it's targeting an image folder, but it's the one contained inside lesson 6. I want it to be inside the one lesson 7. Okay, so there we go. And I get that warning message, and I'm okay with that because I'm leaving this one alone. Okay, we're done with lesson 6. So now what I want to do is I'm going to open up my layout HTML, and it's like the one that we just finished. So I would rather you start with the one that they have given us, because you know that everything is intact, all the styles and everything is working correctly. Okie doke. So I'm now working with this one, and I can, I can close some of the others that I have here. So I can close this one. Same changes to the other one. I'll go ahead and I'll save changes to that. And I have these others that probably I should close too, so I don't get confused. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope. It's really kind of important. It's a weird way that they set this up, but it took me a little while myself to get acclimated to it and make sure that it works correctly. So every time you do a new lesson, it's best if you work with their starting file, if they have one, and make sure that the root folder that you use is that lesson. And then if there's an image folder contained with it, which there is in almost every situation, that the image folder is contained within that root folder to make sure that that's targeted. So, as you can see, and this is what I did a moment ago, that when we work with the scrubber here, and we resize this, especially to a small screen, it works. You get the little hamburger icon in the upper right-hand corner, so that would be where your navigation is located now. But the one thing that they want us to take note of at the moment is the order in which the page loads. And we're going to change that. And we're going to adjust for it. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I set maybe for a small screen here. So if I click right here, it will resize this. Come on. Oh, come on. Let's move it down here. Why aren't you resizing? It's supposed to go down. Well, I'll just do it all the way down to a small size. This will be for a small screen. So what I'm going to do is, so that you can see a little bit better, is if we look at the DOM over here, you can see that the order in which the page loads. So here's your main container. And then there's the top row, okay? And that top row is where our nav bar is. Then here's the header. And here's the main row, which contains the left aside and the article, which contains the main content, and then the right aside. Well, I'm going to flip this around. So we're under the main one here. I'm going to take the aside and I'm going to move it below, in between, like so. Okay, you got that? So as you can see, the order of our divs has changed, and we need to, for a larger screen, get them to fit properly. But then for a smaller screen, this is the order that we want them to work. So I'm going to go ahead and select the aside. I'm going to go ahead and add class to this. It's going to be dot column small. So that was dot column hyphen small. And I want it to pull 6. And it gets pulled back. So that gets pulled back, but now what we want to do for the main article, so I need to make sure that the article is selected, so I can use the selector down here. I'll do the same thing, and I want it to push it over 3 units. So this is going to be dot column hyphen small hyphen. Now this is going to be pushed, we're going to push it over hyphen 3 units. And I apologize from before, I was using the incorrect syntax, and that's why it wasn't working. So now we've got it placed correctly, and I should probably save everything to make sure that it's working. So I don't have to backtrack again. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say File, Save As, and rather than save it on top of theirs, I will name this one Working File. So this is going to be Working File. So I can always go back to the original file should I need to. Okay. So this is saved. And now I need to get it set up for a small screen so that, you know, it looks a little bit nicer. You know, that when we drop down to a really small screen, it appears in the order that I want, but we want it to look for a small screen, not a teeny tiny screen, a little bit nicer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with all of them, and I'm going to change them from small to medium. And then I'm going to add additional features to each one of those. So this is going to be, instead of small, this is going to be medium. And make sure that I do this without deleting things. Hit the tab key. And then again, for instead of small, this is going to be for a medium screen. Okay, medium MD. Tab key. And now I want to make sure that I can select the main article. And you're not going to see a change for this right now. So this, again, I already have this for medium here. And this one, because I probably from the last one didn't change it back. So this should be medium. Okay. And then I need to change the last one too. Okay, so we make sure here, the right aside, and then this is already medium. So I had left that from the previous one, but that should be small, and it's now for medium. And this should work pretty nicely. Now we can create one for a small. So for a small one, a small screen, we're going to come back in here, and I'm going to select the, let me do it from over here. It'll be easier. Select the side. There we go. And I'm going to add one here. So what we're going to do now is this is going to be dot column hyphen small. And this is going to be 4 units. Okay. And I hit the tab key. Now I can add another one. And I want this to be dot column hyphen small. And I want it to be pushed 4 units. Push. Whoops, I can't spell. Push 4 units. Okay. Now I'm going to select the next one, so tab, so that's good. And again, see that really, you know, made it pretty wonky. So I'm going to check here, make sure that I have this right. Let's start to work on the main one now. So let's work on our article. And so I'm going to add. And so for this is going to be dot column. I know that it looks wonky at the moment, but it will be fixed. Column small. And for a small one, this is going to be 8 units. Okay, so this is going to be 8 units, a small screen. Remember, it has to add up to 12. So now what we're going to do is, because I'm going to have 4 and 8, and so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select that. And then this one is going to be, instead of 3, 6, and 3, this is going to be 4 and 8. So this is going to be dot column. And this is going to be hyphen small. And this is going to be push 4. Okay. So let's see what we have here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. And this one clearly needs work. So this should be not push 4, this should have been pull 4. So let's go ahead and make this smaller. You can see it's all messed up. And that's okay. Still making mistakes here. So, but I'm getting it down here. So I'm going to go back to the aside. And instead of push, I don't want that to be pushed over. This should be pull. Let's try some pull. P-U-L-L. Now that works. So let's get this right for that small. So now when I go down like so, okay, that's working. But you can see that the right side doesn't look right. So that's where I need to fix that so that that gets pushed down. So the right side is what needs to be fixed now. So we're going to select the right side. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add for this. And this is going to be for a small screen again. So this is going to be dot column small. And this is going to be 8 units. So it's going to be a total of 8 units, and then we're going to push it over 4 units. So I'll show you what happens. So if I say dot column small, and we want 8, okay, the tab key. Now watch what happens when it goes to a small screen. There we go. So that goes down. Now this one, for a small screen, we have a couple of things that are going wrong here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back and I'm going to select the first side. Okay. So I had this pull 4 units. So I probably want it to pull 8 units. Let's try that instead. No, I don't want that. Let's go ahead and pull that back. Oh, come on. Come on. There we go. So I'm going to have it pull. If I can select that text, there we go. 8 units. There we go. So I had that incorrect. So for a small screen, we now want the column to the left, meaning our smallest side, to be 4 units. And this one to the right is 8 units. The right side is also now 8 units, but notice how, because you can only have 12 units per column, it pushes it down. So now we need to take this one, the one that we just created here, we want this to pull it 4 units over. So I'm going to say dot column hyphen small. And we want it to pull, or is it push? It might be pull. No, I don't see. I can't remember which is which. So I'm going to say pull 4 units. Nope, wrong way. See, I need to push it 4 units. So it went the wrong direction. So let's go back here, and instead of pull, I want it to push 4 units. And there you go. So for a small screen, that's what we have now. For a large screen, and you can see that this is all wonky now in the right column, but we're getting there. We've got this fixed pretty darn close. So for a medium-sized screen, we're good, except for the right column. That needs to be fixed. But then when we get down to a small column, or a small screen, I should say, you'll notice that the order is changed again. Okay? And then for a small screen, the order is perfect. So I need to come back up here. And now I need to add for this right side one more thing. And this is where, I forget this all the time. So what I want to do here is I want dot column medium, because it's messed up for the medium size. And I'm going to put dot column medium, and I'm going to put 0. Tab key, and it should move it back over. Is it moving it back over? No, it's not. Why aren't you moving it back over? So why aren't you doing that? Oh, sorry. Push medium, push 0. That's why. Push 0. There it goes. So it goes back into place. So we've done these gymnastics here, and overall it works pretty well. So for a large screen, okay, we have the order that we had intended originally. For a small screen, watch what happens. We go down and we scroll it down, we push it over, resize it. For a small screen that you would see on a tablet, now we've reordered our columns again so that the order is correct, but you'll notice that the right side has been pushed down and we've added a little bit of size to it. But more importantly, our main article has more space. It still has 8 units. So we have 4 and 8, and then 8 down here. And then we push this over 4 units so that it fits properly. And then for a small screen, we have the following. So that goes down even smaller, and we have the right order. That we have our article that gets presented first, and then we have the asides. So we've done some, a bit of work here, but it's working pretty nicely now. We're almost ready to finish up with this, and that's what we're going to do on Thursday. So I'll do this again, but then there's a few more things that we need to add for here. So that we're going to add a media query for the rules that when it gets really small, and I'll do this on another day, when it gets really teeny tiny down here, and you'll notice that it drops down to 2 rows, that we want that to fit on one. We want the fern to get a little bit smaller, and we're going to make the text, the H1 tag and the H2 tag, be a little bit smaller and maybe center them. Okay, so that's what we have left here for this Thursday. So I will do this again for Thursday, make sure that I get it all working properly, but this will be recorded for today, so that for those of you who weren't able to attend the webinar today and see me goof up because I was using the incorrect syntax, we'll get this all working. Okay, so there you have it. That's today's lecture. Give it a try on your own. Oh, and well, before we leave today, one of the things that I want to mention is that Wix website should be due not this week, but the end of next week. We should have lesson 7 done by the end of this week. If not, it will be the beginning of next week. And then I'm going to show you how to publish it. And where you should be going for a freebie, where did I go here? Let me go to my website real quick. Well, let me just add this so we can do that. So, kmart66.com. So I'm going to go ahead and show you where you should go to be able to use a free host. So if we go under Kirk's classes and you either go to handouts or weekly syllabi, doesn't matter which one. The one that I've added, what we've used to use to publish and to have a free host was 000webhost.com. They're now charging, and it's not expensive, but I want something totally free. So Infinity Free is the place that you should go and set up for unlimited free hosting, and that will serve us well. I published a page on it the other day, and it worked just fine. Okay. I have a question here. I'm sorry, what day next week? The end of the week. The Wix website should be due by the end of next week. Not this week, next week.